I want to speak on today's announcement on Canada's inflation rate. This is the first one for 2024. Now, keep in mind, this report today is based on where we were at with inflation in Canada 30 days prior, which is at the end of 2023. So the inflationary rate, the headline inflationary rate, came in at 3.4%, which is slightly higher than where we were the month prior at 3.1%. The headline inflation, the majority of why this increase happened was for two factors. One is mortgage interest and also rent. Those are the highest percentages of increase that really made inflation sticky in Canada today. But when you actually look at core inflation, now core inflation excludes food and energy prices, has actually come down. We're actually at the lowest level for core inflation that we've had in 6 years. And when you strip out mortgage interest and rent, you'd actually be sitting at an inflationary rate is 2.6, which we all know is very close to the target rate of 2%. So, from an economic perspective, when we're looking at what the economists are forecasting, there's not a lot of change on where the forecast is going to be in 2024. We're still seeing decreases in bank prime, we're seeing decreases on fixed rates. It's just slower for a lot of this to happen in our Canadian economy. So, I want to break down a bit of this headline inflation and what these numbers look like. So, when we're looking at actual mortgage interest costs attributed to 28.6% of the actual headline inflation rate. And when we looked at this from the previous month before, we were at 29%. So the base year effect of mortgage interest is starting to come down. Why is that happening? Well, interest rates are coming down. So as interest rates come down, and we looked at where interest rates were at a year ago, we were starting to see that trend of higher rates. So the spread between where rates are today versus where they were 12 months ago is becoming less. And this is why we're seeing interest rate spreads being less as well. And we're going to see this continue. So as rates come down, we're going to see that mortgage interest costs will come down. And the bottom line is this is what's going to bring inflation, the core inflation and the headline inflation back to the target rate. So keep this in mind when you're strategizing for any type of mortgage refinancing that you're looking at. Now, the second part of inflation today is on rent, and we look at shelter costs. The pace of shelter ended up being 7.7% of interest. And why is that? Because when we're looking at shelter costs, these investors are paying on their mortgages and their rates are higher given where we are at right now with current interest rates. So they're paying a higher interest on their mortgages. And this is why we're seeing rent still at all-time highs. I do anticipate this will start to level off moderately during the year as rates come down. But this is really the two core metrics of why we're seeing that inflation is still very, very sticky right now. And when we look at housing starts, CMHC just came out with a report actually today that talked about how housing starts had increased by 18%. And when you look at that, it's actually not 18% when you look at it year over year, since we're at the lowest point of housing supply in Canada. And this is a lot to do with the number of immigration that are coming into the Canadian economy. The population growth is outpacing actual home supply. And the reason for that is that we're seeing that builders are not keeping up with the demand. Why are builders not keeping up with the demand? Is because of high costs, right? High interest costs, high costs on supplies. And this is part of the reason why that we're seeing that inflation is a bit sticky right now. So bottom line is, where are we going to be sitting at for the future of 2024? I do anticipate, and when I look at the economic sentiment for the next Bank of Canada announcement, which is January 24th, we are seeing that this will remain the same. We're not going to see a decrease in bank prime. We'll see it consistently stay at the bank rate of 5%. The next announcement is March 6th. And this announcement, right now, 63 economists forecast a 0.25% decrease. And then there's another 6 announcements in 2024 after that for Bank Prime. So overall, right now, the economist sentiment is that we should see a 1%, maybe 1.5%, depending on how aggressively decreasing inflation is. We may see Bank Prime come down to 4% or under 4% by the end of 2024. So we're seeing the decreases. We're seeing that the conversation with economists is still a very good consensus that rates are coming down, and that we do anticipate even further reductions in 2025. For a fixed rate perspective, we've seen that fixed rates have come down 100 basis points in the last 30 days. And we have spring market coming up in Canada, which is traditionally around starting at the beginning of February. And we should start to see a lot of these bank financial institutions start to be more competitive interest rates as they start to gain more market share in Canada. Now, when I look at it from a provincial level, we're seeing that the most impact of inflation is hitting is Ontario, Vancouver, and Quebec. And a lot of that has to do with these higher interest rate costs and the amount of housing supply and demand in those markets. So I just do anticipate that as rates come down, and we are a country much based on lower interest rates, that as we start to see these marginal decreases, we will start to see the demand of the housing market start to pick up. So values overall from Royal LePage survey, they anticipated that we should see a 5 to 6% increase in values for 2024. I'm in agreement with that. I think we will see that just because of the nature of supply and demand. And we definitely aren't keeping up with the supply of housing for the amount of population growth. In fact, when you put it in perspective, the housing supply that we have right now is currently back into the 1970s on the supply issue, which means, and back then we didn't even have even half of the population growth that we have today. So we are behind about 250,000 homes just alone for this year to keep up on supply. And we know that the demand is there. So values will just by the nature of supply and demand increase. And this is why if you are sitting on the sidelines to purchase, I would strongly recommend you start getting reapproved for a pre-approval of a mortgage so you know where you stand. Because when you do want to make that action of purchasing a home, and it's going to be very timely in this market, you want to make sure that you're foundationally solid on understanding your financing and where you are with your budget and managing your payments. Now, another point I wanted to talk about is renewals. It's a very hot topic for 2024. I've spoken quite a bit on this on social media and to a lot of my existing database as well, but to anybody who's on my newsletter and you're coming up for renewal in the next 3 years, my recommendation for you is to reach out and speak to us. You have to make sure you understand where you are today to better position yourself for tomorrow. And interest rates are very fluid. They change quite quickly. They can go up and down depending on what's going on in the market. Now, the great news is for this year, because of the declines that we're seeing in interest rates, if you are coming up for renewal, most banks are sending out renewals to you 7 months prior. I actually had that example yesterday from one of the banks. So they're giving you where rates are today, not where they're going to be at the time when you're coming up for renewal. And if you are coming up for renewal, you're really in the driver's seat because you're going to be having access to lower interest rates right up into your actual renewal date. So you want to take advantage of that, as it can actually save you thousands of dollars of interest, and strategically aligning your mortgage for your next renewal by just accelerating your mortgage payments, maybe looking at paying off some debt so you can pay down your mortgage more aggressively. We can help you with a lot of tools and strategies to really, gain some momentum for this next renewal, considering where we've been the last 2 years, and it's been very hard on people financially and economically. So making sure that you reach out so that we have you in consideration when we're looking at rates to be able to help you position what mortgage product and what rate you take. Going fixed or variable is really going to be contingent on where you are at financially, where you are at with your budget, and what is your long and short-term goals. There's no one solution right now on what I'm recommending, because it's really going to be based on even where you are with your employment and where you are with the equity in your home on the decisions that we make for recommendations. So bottom line, get connected with us. Let's get you on a path of clarity and position so that we know where to best suit your mortgage for your next renewal. And knowing that rates are coming down, it really does put you in the driver's seat. So I'm very excited about that. The next Bank of Canada announcement is January 24th. I'll have another update on that, but I do anticipate that we won't see any increases. So for anyone that's in a variable rate mortgage, this is good news because we're not seeing any more increases. You're just not having your rate adjusted. But what do you do in your renewal, or even in your existing variable right now if you're not up for renewal? Give us a call. Let us go through these options so you know where you're at. A lot of people have equity right now, because we still have had increases in values over the last 4 years in Canada, depending on when you bought and where it's settling right now on the value of your home, that we can help you realign if you're outstanding on unsecured debts or credit cards to get you betterly aligned with your financing and your budget so that you are on a path of success. I'm here to be able to guide you economically with inflation, making you understand this, and with your financing. And navigating these times can look challenging, but there's huge opportunities when you can see the light, especially where we're going. Inflation is going to come down to target rates, and we're going to see rates settle down, probably by 2026 in that mid 3%, if not sooner. So we want to strategically align your mortgage and your financing for that win. And I want to see you succeed and thrive in these economic conditions because you can. It's about really being proactive and being able to navigate your situation. And no one financing looks the same as everyone else. Everyone's truly unique in their situation. And that's why this catered boutique service is able to provide you here at Valco Financial. I want you to win this year in 2024. Stay informed, stay educated. Make sure you check out any of our social media platforms. I'm on there daily updating on information and what's going on in the market. And at the end of the day, thriving in 2024 is where I want to see you succeed. So thank you so much. Wishing you all the best this year. Stay informed, stay connected, and I'll see you on my next update.